Expert Strategies with Joe Welu. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, Kelly, I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, I have a question. The big buzzword lately, we hear it all the time, co-marketing. What is that?
Yeah, co-marketing is actually much simpler than most people's interpretation. Co-marketing is essentially two like-minded professionals or companies that target the same general customer and sharing the cost of those marketing assets, materials, or campaigns together. That's essentially what it is.
Can I just be the devil's advocate and ask you to beat me over the head and explain how this is different from MSAs? Is this just a compliant way to do that or something totally different?
Well, so MSAs were effectively, there was supposed to be marketing done. Okay, so the major differences, checks would come into the real estate broker, the agent, or the team leader for marketing services. The problem with that is very little of that capital that was supposed to be used on marketing actually made it into physical marketing.
Okie doke.
A major difference, right?
Yeah. Big.
So co-marketing is essentially saying, okay, we're going to take the capital that we used to spend on MSAs, maybe if on the lender side, and we're going to actually deploy that alongside these agents or teams or brands that we want to work with, and put it towards growing the business into actual marketing.
So, okay, based on the fact that this is actual marketing for sure, why is this effective and why is it becoming, kind of the wave of the future?
Well, it's effective, number one, because it allows for you to be cost effective in the way you're acquiring customers. And it's also effective because it helps build trust with the customer. And what I mean by that is if, let's say let's use a realtor example. And if I'm a realtor in a neighborhood and I am going to start building my brand and targeting customers there, it's extremely beneficial for me to be aligned or associated with a well-respected brand that has the same general philosophies that I do on the mortgage side, that will allow me to compress the amount of time it takes to build trust with those customers. If my target customer is seeing me associated with a first-class organization, I immediately gain more credibility with them. That's what the research really says, and we see the living proof of that, those examples working. So,
and it makes perfect sense that a mortgage loan officer and a realtor would go ahead and take this approach together, because at the end of the day, unless everybody has a never-ending pool of cash buyers, most everybody needs that mortgage.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I mean, obviously there's regulations that you have to be mindful of, and you have to follow the guidelines along RESPA. There's very defined things that you have to do. But I would tell you that the average consumer, looks. They want to have a very concierge type of experience with their real estate transaction. They want to feel like everything works together fluidly. So if it's fragmented and you've got companies that have never worked with each other, that are disjointed, that have very different philosophies on customer service, all of a sudden that transaction experience just got ruined. So if I'm an agent, and back when I was in the business, we would have a great transaction with a customer. We'd get up to the closing table, something would happen with the mortgage, and that completely spoiled the experience for them.
Sure.
And so now customers they don't want, multiple transactions. They don't think about buying a home as all these different transactions, meaning you're working with a real estate company, a mortgage company, an insurance company, an inspector, whatnot. They look at it as one total experience. Does that make sense?
It does. So let me ask you this, because obviously an agent wants the buyer in a transaction to go with a mortgage loan officer that they have a track record with, that they can trust, and all of that sort of thing. And obviously the mortgage loan officer doesn't want to be shopped. So does co-marketing probably solves that, because you're presenting as a unified front. But my question is does the buyer actually really like it better anyway? I mean, do they like it better than shopping around and making themselves frazzle?
They actually, in many cases, do. They actually, there's a certain buyer that wants to go online and they're going to shop the lowest rate no matter what. And that's one type of buyer. But there's also the extremely busy professional that just wants to know they're working with an absolute pro. They're working with an expert, somebody that is really, really good at their business, and they don't mind paying a little bit extra for high quality and great service. So we've proven that in our society, people are willing to pay, in many cases, incrementally for great experience, great service. Look at Uber; it's a best example. I reference them a lot, but they're certainly in many cases more expensive than taking a taxi somewhere. But the demand has been so exceptional because they've done a great job at connecting with their core customer, and they've also done a great job at providing that great experience through the transaction. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I guess the question that I would have too would be people, I think for a really long time, thought that they had to run themselves ragged to do all of the exploration. I think that the co-marketing can really save some time for them and sort of eliminate objections on the front end.
Yeah, I think first there's a couple of different pieces to it. Number one, you've got your co-marketing at its foundation is getting the brands out there and going after trying to acquire those new customers. And then it's up to each brand, each individual or company. They have to be strong at engaging with that customer on their own. And it's always very important that through your education process, do you reinforce, listen, here you can go anywhere you want and hire anybody you want to do these things. And I think that when you do that and you open it up and say, listen, you're certainly free to go and do whatever you want. Here's the reason that I work with this particular individual, and you can decide if that's right for you. But many times they love that approach. It's a great way to improve the experience of that buyer, and it's great for both companies and both individuals because it's a more cost-effective way to build business.
How do you do that, though? Doesn't it get kind of messy trying to stay within the guidelines of RESPA and all that?
It can. It certainly can. And a lot of organizations fail to do it appropriately. The way the guidelines are is essentially you can do co-marketing on a marketing asset. So if you've got a billboard on an interstate, a mortgage company or title company or real estate company, doesn't have to be just realtor and mortgage. It could be any businesses related to any industry for that matter. But each person should pay their pro rata space that they've got on that marketing asset. So if I've got 20% of that billboard, I can't pay for 50% of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to document this. You have to be able to show this to the regulators that you followed the rules. And generally, from everything I've heard, all the companies that follow those rules and document it appropriately and put those processes in place, they don't have any trouble.
Okay, that's cool. So give me some examples of who does this well and not so much.
Yeah. So companies that do it well, they have a lot of clarity at the top of the organization, and they've got systems and resources in place that are focused on making sure things are structured properly, things are tracked properly, and their go-to-market messaging, meaning if they're out engaging, let's just use a mortgage company as an example. If I'm a mortgage company and I've got my MLOs out having conversations with agents, there's an appropriate way to have those conversations and an inappropriate way. So in the training aspects of it, they've got to make sure they're having those conversations correctly, and it all comes from proper sales training from the top of the organization.
Okay,
that's the biggest factor.
To get everybody on the same page about what it is, how to deploy it, and then the follow through.
Yeah, and let me rephrase that. The other major element of that is having a centralized set of resources that are simple for them to find, and you have one platform that you choose. Right? obviously see there's lots of different things out there, and there's way to tie different platforms together, but you have essentially one set of resources that are the same for everybody. So you're not, organizations run into problems when they have 100 different things they're allowing people to do, and they have all these one-off things.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they really get burned.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that also, not only can it run afoul of regulatory guidelines, it also can really detract from your brand.
No question. You're only as good as the people that you associate with in the marketplace. And so if your brand isn't aligned with the right individuals, number one, you got to be cognizant of that. So you want to have some due diligence on who you're co-marketing and co-branding with, and you want to make sure they have the same level of integrity, the same philosophies on taking care of the customer that you do. So those are some pieces that I see required.
So from the standpoint of the mortgage companies out there, and then the realtors that they work with, I mean, would you say that it's in the best interest of all of these different producers out there to explore this and set up these relationships to create more success? Or?
I think it absolutely is, and I should say absolutely can be if that is if you're a purchase business focused. On the mortgage side, it makes 100% sense. On the real estate side, if you are focused on listings, which you should be, because we've talked about many times, that's the point of sale. It also makes sense. And when you go to market together, going after neighborhoods and branding in those communities, those times, it absolutely makes sense in those types of scenarios. If I'm on the lender side and I'm only focused on refinances, which are traditionally going to be more susceptible to online search and those types of things, it may not be as relevant, right?
Okay. I guess finally, because you certainly travel the country and deal with some of the top, most successful companies in the country, I mean, what advice would you have for MLOs and companies that really haven't wrapped their arms around this yet?
I think you have to do, number one, you have to do your research and understand the space. So we've certainly got some resources and things like that on our website that are available, but there's lots of information out there. So understand the general space and what's available, what you can do, and then make some decisions. If I'm an individual, I'm going to look at what do I want to accomplish by doing this? Okay, do I want to find 3 or 4 or 10 top agents that I'm going to align very closely with and I'm going to go to market with? Get those things defined. If I'm an organization, I want to have my systems, processes, and procedures clearly outlined. I want to make sure we've got our hands around what is our framework, make sure that we've got checks and balances in place, and then make sure that that is communicated with a lot of frequency down to the salespeople. You know how salespeople are. Certainly, I fell into that world, and you can tell somebody something on Monday by Monday afternoon they sort of forgot what's available to them. Right. So reinforcing what the framework is and what's available to them for resources.
Okay, and so that really, at the end of the day, it kills all sorts of birds with one stone from a management level perspective.
It no question does. And I think there's been so much reaction to what has happened. Everybody's been really super reactive to what's happening. They've pulled out of MSAs, pulled out of co-marketing in general, or just sort of been put off balance, if you will.
Absolutely.
And now organizations are coming back saying, okay, this is a viable strategy. How do we go to market and be successful at it? And defining that outline and having clarity as to what that looks like.
Absolutely. So for more detailed or individualized input regarding co-marketing and how it can benefit your organization, go ahead and shoot us an email and we will connect you with a total expert.